folks, Sean here. We've got a carving class coming up next month, so I've gone and bought a load of new Mora knives, so they're nice and so they're going to be ready for people to be using them at the class. I thought I'd go through the process and how I go about sharpening them. So I'll quickly go over what I've got here. I've got a diamond stone. It's got 300 grit on one side, 1000 grit on the other. Got a small file, any size file will do. Got a strop, it's been loaded with compound. Got a ceramic rod, and I've got a dowel strop as well. With the diamond stone, you could just as easily use wet and dry paper. Same as with the ceramic rod, you could use wet and dry wrap around a dowel. It just so happens that I've got these now, so they're my preferred use. The Mora 164 knife, it's not a great knife to start with. It's got, I don't know if we can see on here, it's got bevels on the outside. Just find this to point with. Got a bevel round here, and it's also got an internal bevel here, so basically it's got two bevels before you get to the edge of the blade. What I try and do with the sharpening for these is just take the high points of these bevels off. It gives it more of a curved angle with a nice flat inside, which means when you're scooping out the inside of your bowl, it's actually nice and curved and you're not chattering on these high points. The other problem with the 164, it's got a very sharp point on the end. These do tend to catch you and open you up. So first thing I do is I'd normally take this point off the end, and I just use a file and take the tip off. Now, the back of the blade here is the safe side, so I'm fine filing towards it. You don't need to take too much off of this. I'll kind of show you when I'm and what we're looking to do is just create a bit of a curve on that back edge as well. So now that the front of the blade is towards me, I'm working further up on the file, so it's not near my fingers. What I'm looking to do there is just to take see here, the tip now is nice and rounded. These cameras are horrible once you've got to put a person's face in it, it just wants to focus on that. But yeah, the tip is nice and rounded now, so it's a lot less likely to catch you. Now we just need to work on knocking these edges, these high points off. So I'm going to start with the 1000 grit. And start with the 300 grit. And from the back, right up on the top bevel, and we're just going to work our way down to that bottom corner. As you can see, I'm rolling as I'm going. It doesn't take very many strokes with this. So what I'm looking to do is just make sure I've hit all of the high points and the very edge of the blade. It gets a little bit juddery around this area, and we just have to work with it as best we can. You can see as I'm rolling in, I'm also rolling this wrist slightly, so I'm making sure I'm getting right to the edge of the blade. a look in a moment. So I've got a line all the way along this high point where I've taken some off, most of the way along the back of that bevel, and most of the way around there. So I'm just going to work on a few bits that haven't got wearing areas. That's better there. A little bit up here as well. Got a burr all around there. All of the high points have got some wear on them. And the more we do this over time, every time we give this knife a sharpen, the more of an angle it will get, the easier it will get to use. Onto the 1000 grit. Exactly the same process. I'm just trying to take off these really warm parts that I've got now and smooth them out. So it doesn't take very much. You can hear an instant difference in the sound. So basically those scratches now are being made a lot finer. And then come right round to the end of that tip as well, work our way back. Have a quick look. So we're nice and clear along there, a little bit here. That's good there on the outside bevel. Now the closer one to the blade, a little bit of work near the tip again. And then we're just going to have a quick look along the edge of the very edge of the blade. See if there's any rough spots. If there are, we're just going to hit them with this 1000 grit. And again, as you can see, I'm rolling not just the hand that's got the diamond stone, but also the other hand as well, to try and get everything I can. It's got a nice burr all the way around on the inside now. So, next part we do is we're going to look at knocking that burr out just a little bit. So I'm going to use my ceramic rod, put it on, lay it flat, roll it. And then roll it back the other way. Again, as you can see, I'm working away from the edge with this. So I get the sharp edges here, and I'm trying to drag it away from the edge. I don't want to work into it with the ceramic stone, with the ceramic rod. It can damage it slightly. I've now dragged the burr onto the outside, a couple of spots. I just need to work around. That's better. Just that very tip. So that's better. So now I've knocked the burr from being underneath. It's now back on the other side, so I'm going to go on it with a strop. And what I'm looking to do now is just polish all of the parts that the 1000 grit's touched, and just touch that edge. Then when we dowel strop the inside, that should clean it all the way up. I can already see it beginning to polish. Doesn't take very many. I loaded this up earlier with some compound, so this takes it to about 8000 grit, which is more than enough for most carving, especially the classes I'm going to be running are going to be using mainly sycamore or birch, both quite relatively easy woods to carve. So a quick check along, and for that polishing on the outside, there's a couple of spots I could do with a little bit more. Just do that outside bevel, inside bevel. Again, although this hand's doing most of the movement, this is doing subtle movements just to make sure I cover those last little bits. So I'm going to use the strop just on the inside. That's nice. It's lovely and sharp on the outside now. Just roll with that. Push it off. Have a check. There's a little tiny high point just there, which I think I'll already touch up. And that might just come out with the strop. That's better. Make sure it's not rolled on the inside there. No, we're all good. It's nice and sharp all the way around. That's all done. So what, 10-12 minutes on that. I've also got some 163s, which are the square-ended double-sided ones. With those, you do exactly the same process for knocking the corners, for knocking the high points off when I'm sharpening. And on the square end, imagine if that's the square end, I just knock the very corners off and round those off a little bit as well. Just stops them digging into the material when you're carving so much. So next up, we're going to have a look at using the I think this is called the Mora Basic Crafts, isn't it? Mora Basic. So on here, I've got a little block just to raise it up a little bit. With some of that sticky material just to stop it rocking around. Spray it up. I'm going to lay that knife on there as close to the edge as I can get it and roll it. And what you can do, especially, it's nice and easy once the paper, once the thing's wet, because you actually see the material, the liquid, kind of rock away, and you know you hit that edge then. And you haven't got to do the 300 grit with this, I'm just pretty much doing this to demonstrate. And we're going to rock away, and as we go around the corner, lift this hand very slightly and push with the finger. So this finger's just holding the edge down, this finger's pushing. We'll give it about 10 strokes. And so if we have a look on, we can see it's roughening up quite nicely. I'm going to turn it around the other way, do exactly the same on the other side. Again, about 10 strokes. If you do it one side, you really should do the other about the same. It just means that over time, as it wears down, it stays even. Again, have a quick look, make sure you've got, there's a little point there that's not been touched. There we go. Turn it over, do the 1000 grit. I've already got some liquid on there. A little bit more. Again, amazing how quickly these grits work, especially on these diamond stones. These decent ones. I've got these from Beaver Bushcraft. And rather than like a lot of the cheap ones you can get online, these ones last for years. And very, very reliable. So have a quick look. All of those deeper scratches are going. Turn it around and work towards me for this. Very similar technique. Most of it's done with the rocking on this hand. This hand's just holding the blade flat, keeping the pressure level. And I think we're good there. Now back onto the strop. What I tend to do, I'm going to work it all the way down, 10 on each side. As I've seen Joe mention a few times and a few other people, when you get to the end, don't whip it off, otherwise you can damage the tip. So what you do is you come all the way down and just stop, lift it off. Back the other way. And then what I do after that is I then do from the tip all the way up. 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 10. That's a nice little edge on there. Job's done. Under 20 minutes for the 2 blades. I've got about 15 more blades to go, so I'm going to get on with those off camera. Take care, guys.